What is up, YouTube? HPJ here, and it's time to talk about the ever faithful servant of Harpie Lady. Harpie's pet dragon is probably one of the most iconic monsters in the Yu-Gi-Oh history books. While being such a late bloomer in terms of support, retrains, and stuff like that, the Harpie archetype itself has definitely been around the franchise for years. And because of how much of an influence that Harpies themselves have had, you've seen a big wave of things for the Harpie archetypes over these last few years. One being that Yu-Gi-Oh! Rush Duel got major waves of support of Harpies, not only bringing the Harpies into the lineup from God Breath Wing, the deck building set that introduced the OG Harpie cards into it, with a couple of new support cards for Harpies. There's also its inclusion in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Rush Duel structure deck, the Harpie Lady Sisters, giving it the reprint, and of course its inclusion in Harpie Lady Pet Master, as sequentially one of its retrains was used as inspiration for the ability of that Harpie monster. I'm going to go over each of the all of the Harpie's pet dragon monsters in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise, as well as going over what ideas and theories of things I can love to see going on later, but not only Yu-Gi-Oh! Rush Duel before the TCG and OCG, as it's been quite a long time since we've gotten some major wave of Harpie support in TCG and OCG. Well, I would love to see some varied retrains as well in Yu-Gi-Oh! Rush Duel. So starting off with them all, we start with Harpie's Pet Dragon. It's a level 7 wind attribute dragon type monster with 2000 attack, 2500 defense. Its effect reads it gains 300 attack and defense for each Harpie Lady on the field. While this being one of the older Yu-Gi-Oh! Monsters in the game, and probably strangely enough, one of the rare occasions where a level 5 or higher monster has an ability that isn't some form of random negation or some way of dragging itself down, it's not the best ability you can think of, as it's only there to power up thanks to the number of Harpie ladies that are present on the board. While it doesn't seem like too much of a bad thing, you kind of look at it in a way of, this is how early Yu-Gi-Oh! Used to be. You would have your board set up with a whole bunch of monsters and then summon some of your bigger monsters so that you can combat some of your opponent's bigger monsters or force them into not being able to play much and then swinging at them for massive damage with your big monsters. Now, prevalently, yes, this is not the only Harpie monster, but there are other variations of itself that definitely do support the Harpie archetype. Also note the fact that there is a retrain of this in Yu-Gi-Oh! Rush Duel. Harpie's Pet Dragon still shares its same attack, defense, level, type, and attribute as it does for the original version, but in this card's case, it gains 300 attack for each Harpie Lady on the field and 900 attack for each Harpie Lady Sisters on the field, which is only prevalent because Harpie Lady Sisters are now their own individual monsters in Yu-Gi-Oh! Rush Duel, as well as them being the maximum monster in that set. Now, moving on from there, we're going to talk about the retrains. The first retrain is Harpie's Pet Baby Dragon. This is a level 4 wind attribute dragon type monster with 1200 attack, 600 defense. Its effects reads that it accumulates its abilities based on the number of Harpie monsters on your side of the field, excluding itself. Harpie's Pet Dragon, when there are one or more Harpies on the field, has the ability to make it the attack target from your opponent's monsters. Its second effect is that it doubles its original attack and defense if there are 2 or more Harpies on the field, and if there are 3 or more Harpie monsters on the field. Once a turn, you can target one card your opponent controls and destroys it. Now, while this monster itself is more of a retrain in terms of main deck, there is an Xyz variation of the Harpie Pet Dragon, and that is Harpie's Pet Phantasmal Dragon, known in the OCG as Harpie's Pet Mirage Dragon. This is a rank 4 wind attribute dragon type Xyz monster, sharing the same attack, defense, type, and attribute as the original dragon. This monster requires 3 level 4 wind monsters for its Xyz summon, and applies and resolves its effects while it has Xyz material. Your opponent cannot target Harpie monsters you control for battle or card effects. This monster can attack your opponent directly. At the end of each of your end phases, detach one material from this card. Harpie's pet Mirage Dragon has a bit of history itself that was actually used for its introduction on the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG website, giving that this monster's whole origin is that Harpie Chandler, who's featured in this card's artwork, has summoned it summoned it through time and space, using her ability Hysteric Sign, allowing her to summon this faithful beast to come aid its masters in combat from a different time in different dimension. Now, in addition to that, we have the last of the retrains, and that is Harpie's pet dragon, Fearsome Fire Blast, known in the OCG as Harpie's pet dragon, Saint Fire Giga. This monsters cannot target level 6 or lower Harpie monsters for attacks. You only use each of the following effects of Harpie's pet dragon, Fearsome Fire Blast, once per turn. If you control a level 6 or lower wind monster, you can summon this card from your hand in defense position. If this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can send one winged beast monster from your deck to the graveyard, ultimately being the last and most recent installment of Harpie monsters in the wave of Harpie cards themselves. Harpie's pet dragon, Fearsome Fire, takes its inspiration in of itself from that being, well, a retrain of Harpie's pet dragon. It's an actual attack monster, if you will, as it has the signature attack of that base monster in its card artwork and focusing on that. There isn't any spells that cops itself as Fearsome Fire Blast, so there isn't that much to worry about. But it's the overall inclusion of that. It's a Harpie monster that it is a monster that is the attack card for a particular monster itself. We normally see that in like spells or traps, but we actually have those few cards that are monster variants of themselves. Now, with all the dragons out of the way, let's go over each of them themselves. So we're going to bring the other two variations back onto the field. The one thing that you note about the Harpie's pet dragons is that they're inclusions of Harpie Lady and Harpie Lady sisters, and rather the Harpie archetype overall. The only exclusion to this is that of, well, Harpie's brother, because it's considered not to be a Harpie monster anymore. And as of Astral Pack 2, they changed that monster's name to that of Sky Scout, excluding it from any of the future Harpie cards releases, so that they did not have any more issues or concerns in terms of its ability. Its inclusion to the archetype. Which, yes, as of this video, and just to confirm it, Harpie brother is not a Harpie monster. He was never meant to be a Harpie monster, and that his original version of himself is known as Birdman. And due to the weird translation errors that go on in Yu-Gi-Oh!, especially in the earlier days, they only gave this monster its TCG name just so that it can fit in with the archetype. I have a different video on Harpie's brother if that's ever needed or asked for. But for the most part, with the dragons themselves, they have a lot of things in common. Protecting the Harpie monsters from battle or card effects, aiding to that way their monsters do not get affected by things. There's also the inclusion of that the Harpie's pet dragons all still carry on their big headpiece, which is what? Emerald glance with different beaded jewels and a golden chain with beaded jewels around it that are similar to the ones on its headpiece. The dragon itself, even in its original version and that of the Rush Duel variant, was just basically powering itself up for every version of its master that was on the field. The only difference is that the one from Rush Duel accounts to its anime counterpart, where it's gaining attack points equal to the number of Harpie Lady sisters, as the sisters were individual monsters themselves, while in Rush Duel they are individual monsters there, and they also given the threat point to be more of the focal point to just being the boss monsters that they are. And it's kind of strange though, because I've said it multiple times, I wish they would reprint Harpie Lady sisters so that they can accumulate to Harpie's pet dragon's own ability. But in the point of where this dragon stands itself, it's basically the Garnet of the archetype, as even though it's not a normal monster, it's one of those cards you don't want to draw into because what utilities will you normally have with it? You can probably play it now using it in spots effects with Tempest to try to flesh out for Harpie's Pet Dragon First on Fire, but even then, that would just be a waste of a slot that you could use for maybe another Harpie's Pet Dragon First on Fire, as not only can it special summon itself, unlike the original, but it has protection abilities attached to it, and even setup game with cards like Tri Brigade, Nerval, and even that of Harpie Harpes, activating her ability to when she was sent from the to the graveyard, that at the end phase she can search for Harpie kin and add it to the hand. So, in retrospective of things, yeah, the original dragon is not something you should go to, and while ultimately, yes, the rush duel variation of it is better, it's still one of those things that isn't played because there's just so many better Harpie options in terms of utilizing a level 7 monster, or rather so just cutting out the level 7 because there's so many variations of Harpie cards that they have that you can easily just play around with. From moving on from that, let's go ahead and go through each of the retrains. And I think we'll start off with Harpie's Pet Baby Dragon since the first of them. Being a lower level monster means it's an actual normal summon that doesn't require too many additional things to it. Its gaining abilities based off the number of Harpie monsters is actually really good. As remember, Elegant Egotist is still a thing, even abruptly when it was introduced. Later on, Harpie Channeler, giving it access as well, and that she'll change her name to Harpie Lady so that you can play Elegant Egotist and put another Harpie monster onto the board. Then its ability to destroy a card on your opponent's side of the field when you have 3 or more Harpies in play. Also give it some resources there. Means that if you can combine Elegant Egotist's ability, that with Hysteric Sign, allowing you to search for it again, and then bringing on another Harpie Lady or Sisters, then giving at least 3 bodies onto the field. Most of the combinations in total, you would have to leave some of these cards in your hand, or even playing around with cards like Swallow's Nest to bring things out. Even Swallow's Carré if you can. Maybe popping off an additional Harpie that's already on the board to go get Harpie Oracle. If you haven't already used Harpie Channeler's ability, you can use it then, combining with Oracle's ability to play her, then play Elegant Egotist, and then get a Harpie Lady onto the field, making it now 3. Harpie Dancer can even acquire to this, as you can Swallow's Nest out one of your Harpies to put her onto the board. Then select the Pet Dragon to bounce it back into the hand, and then drop it again. This is why cards like Harpie Lady Elegant could be retrospectively used with Harpie Lady Sisters, but since we don't have a retrain, you kind of have to opt out to some other utilities. You can even combine this card with the other 2 dragons that you see on the board. Harpie's Pet Phantasmal Dragon, giving it some of a pseudo lock, allowing it to that where the Harpies can't be attacked for 3 turns, this dragon can still pop off monster effects as long as you get at least 2 more Harpies onto the board. And they'll be protected thanks to the dragon, thanks to the Phantasmal Dragon, because they can't be targeted for attacks or for effects. So the only thing that you'd have to worry about is something like Dark Hole. But if you play out to your abilities and stuff, you should easily be able to get over that. And even Harpie's Pet Dragon First on Fire, where because this monster is already a level 4 or lower a level 6 or lower wind monster, you can special summon it onto the board. I did hear a lot of combination. I did hear upon Fearsome Fire's release, some people trying to play into that combination. Even though it seems a little more archaic, as most things of Battle Phase and stuff aren't really much prevalent, the thing was that it's easy to wipe out a monster that says it can't be targeted by battle or card effect, using cards like Raigeki or Dark Hole to wipe it off the field. But it's still an inclusion of an ability and setup, as well, if you think about it. In some decks that do force themselves to go into the battle phase, this is kind of a combination that they can't normally get out of. The dragon protecting its younger variation from being targeted from your opponent's for battle, while the other one forces your opponent to try to swing into it. So ultimately will having to waste resources to massively remove cards off of the field. While neither of them protect them from the destruction abilities of card effects, or those that are AoE spells and traps and abilities that wipe the board clean, it still presents some type of ability if you're more so focusing on not a massive competitive variation of duels, and even some weird strategies that can come of it. It's just, like I said, archaic setups for things that years later kind of aren't really prevalent to that. And what I mean by that is no one's really trying to stick into the battle phase when there's multiple 20 to 30-minute plus turns being executed to where you can easily find ways to wipe out your opponent's board if they're not already using things to counteract you trying to fill out that board. Then there is Harpie's Pet Dragon, Harpie's Pet Phantasmal Dragon. And while this card does kind of eliminate the whole your opponent can't target your Harpie monsters for effects, it too is subjected to that of, AoE abilities, such as Dark Hole, Raigeki, any massive removals, any massive negations, and anything that basically says, I don't have to target you, I just have to blow you up without targeting you, and even that itself runs over the dragons. It's crazy enough though that we still to this day don't have a dragon that, protects your harpies from card effects. Not just the ones that target, but just for effects in general. You don't even see a harpy monster trying to do that, and in prevalence it would be still a resourceful card, even through its summoning mechanics. I think one of the easiest things to say about each of these dragons themselves is how much of versatility they've gotten over the times, whether it's small things or even bigger combo plays that come through. It is still talked about that how many cards in the Harpie archetype have some to really good abilities, but ultimately get panned out for later things, or just overrun through the mechanics of the games themselves, but how things have now progressed with other archetypes and how the game itself changed over these last couple of years. Now, if there's anything that I would like to say into it, is now the bigger meat of it. Bringing in the other two dragon cards, let's talk about future Harpie's Pet Dragon stuff for both OCG, TCG, and for Rush Duel. One of the big things in Rush Duel right now that's going on is ritual monsters. Many have acquired to say that there could be a possibility of a Harpie's Pet Dragon being a ritual monster, which I would love to see. Vetted to the effect of, remember, they would also need to spawn a ritual spell. And how would that ritual spell in its entirety really factor into Harpies? Could it be a hysteric spell that's going to be a ritual spell benefiting from your uses of the Harpie monsters? Then the dragon itself being able to be summoned. How would you utilize that ability, or how would you utilize the dragon? What things you could give to the dragon? My thing is that, well, if you're going to make it a ritual monster, make it something that can blow up cards on the field. We've seen a lot of those ritual monsters, especially some of the OG ones, coming into Rush Duel with a lot of unique abilities themselves. Maybe being able to treat itself as the original pet dragon, or gaining abilities similar to that of Harpie's Pet Baby Dragon and Harpie's Pet Phantasmal, where while it's on the field and there are other Harpies in play, you can gain different abilities as well. It kind of would lead into that with Harpie Ladies 1, 2, and 3, as we kind of seen how well they've done with that situation. So it would like to be cool to see a ritual version of it in Rush Duel. Now, in terms of the TCG and OCG, I would definitely love to see maybe a fusion monster variant of it. Actually, I can account that to Rush Duel as well, as we've seen, the Harpie Ladies get Rush Duel versions. Why not combine the Harpie Ladies with their faithful servant and make them into fusion monsters, both for TCG, OCG, and for Rush Duel, giving them unique abilities to survive that. I think Contact Fusion would also be a good way of handling the situation, as you would only require to need a monster who is Harpie Lady on the field, or is a Harpie monster, and infuse it with either that of the dragons to then go into Harpie's Pet Dragon Fusion Monster. and being able to utilize some of its unique abilities there. Being able to maybe remove cards, negate effects, or that, so even being able to summon other harpies onto the board. A wave of things and ideas that I definitely have been thinking about when it comes to a retrain of Harpie's Pet Dragon. My other optimal idea is that of a Link monster. Since Harpies don't have a Link 3, it would be nice to see a Link 3 Harpie monster come out. Maybe also doing similar things themselves. Including one or more Harpie monsters in for its Link summon. Being able to bring out Harpie monsters specifically from the deck or hand. Kind of that similar to Samorg. And even giving some Samorg based protection to your Harpie monster. What Link arrows would I would like for it to have? Oh, definitely for it to point bottom right, bottom left, and bottom. Similar to that of Harpies. Similar to that of Samorg Bird or Sovereignty. So that way it can knock out that little situation. I would love for it to maybe need to include a Harpie monster for its Exceed Summon, forcing it to not have such generic play. That is similar to how most generic monsters, in kind of the unfortunate situation without a Samorg Bird or Sovereignty. I would definitely love to see that. And even more so if we do get a retrain for the extra deck, make it some type of main deck. Make it some type of boss monster. Or make it a summoner if you can. Just so that there are some more playabilities to itself in that of the other Harpies that are in the archetype. And while both the Rush Duel and the TCG variants can be very different, we would still like for the outcome to that be something playable, something that can be utilized, and something that doesn't take almost an entire 30 minutes to try to play with. And even in the tone, I think it would be a great way to see what ways of evolutions of cards can be done. Not to mention, I would love to see how they would interact with some additional cards. Especially if they would look for a fusion variant. Make a fusion spell or make a spell that would correspond with said fusion. You can make it a contact fusion. Probably maybe even drop a ritual monster with a ritual spell that can also benefit from being destroyed by your Harpie card effect or your opponent's card effect. That's similar of Harpie's Feather Storm and that of Alluring Mirror Split, which is still a very good card, by the way, because its second effect is more prevalent than its first. But I think I've shared enough of my opinions on these faithful servants and what my ideas for what a potential new one could be. Names, as long as it says Harpie's Pet, we're gonna be fine. Whatever variation of ways they want to deal with that's fine. Just make sure it's usable. So, in terms with that, let me know what you guys think about the Harpie's Pet Dragon and what ideas you would like to have for the faithful servant in the comments section below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and it definitely does help out in the long run. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, as it helps out tremendously. You can hit the notification bell to be informed of when I upload more content to the channel. Social media links, they're in the description box below, and I will catch you all next time. HBJ signing out. Take care.